Dragon Ball, the top 10 best villains in the franchise. Every Dragon Ball fan loves the intense clashes of unfathomable power that the series is known for, but none of that would be remotely close to possible without great villains. In fact, perhaps even more than most series, villains are important to Dragon Ball. Some of DB's greatest characters are villains, after all, and the villain-turned-hero theme prevalent throughout the series has turned some of those villains into anime's most beloved heroes. With so many amazing villains, deciding on the absolute best of the best would be a difficult decision for any fan of the franchise. However, certain villains do stand out from the pack in terms of impact, influence, and narrative significance. From King Piccolo to Frieza, Dragon Ball's best villains have had a lasting effect, not just on fans of Dragon Ball, but on the history of anime as an art form. Mercenary Dao set the foundation for powerful villains. First introduced in Dragon Ball manga chapter 85, Tao Pai Pai the Assassin, Mercenary Dao trained Tien Shinhan when he was still a student at the Crane School under Master Shen. Most of Dragon Ball's characters are martial artists who possess superhuman strength, durability, and speed, and many of them can use ki as a weapon. Dao was the first truly unbeatable threat in Dragon Ball, and he's therefore a part of history. Without Dao paving the way for Goku's training arcs to become strong enough to defeat the looming doom, the Saiyan, Frieza, and Cell sagas would have had nowhere near as much impact. Dao wasn't the absolute first villain Goku faced, but he was the most foundational in terms of the shonen battle tropes that the series would later refine with future villains and eventually master with DBZ. His re-emergence as a cyborg also set the stage for future cyborg characters like Cyborg Frieza and Metacooler. Granola is an underrated gem for Super. First introduced in Dragon Ball Super manga chapter 67, happy endings, and then Dragon Ball Super fans are excited for the upcoming superhero to see just how strong Gohan Beast is and Super Saiyan Pan. What makes Granola a great villain is his ethical high ground in comparison to other villains in the series. While most have no reason to attack Goku and Earth other than their desire for power or evil goals, Granola understandably seeks revenge for the injustice done to his people by the conquering Saiyan race. This makes Granola unique in the Dragon Ball series because he forces Vegeta to answer for the mistakes of the people he so proudly claimed himself as prince of. There have been a lot of ups and downs insofar as Super is concerned for fans. Still, Granola is definitely a highlight of not only Super, but of the entire Dragon Ball franchise. While he isn't as well known as many of Dragon Ball's other iconic villains due to him being manga only, Granola will surely emerge as a fan-favorite character in the franchise and get more widespread recognition as one of the best-written villains when Dragon Ball Super Part 2 is finally adapted into anime form. Broly was too great to remain non-canon. First introduced in Dragon Ball Z, Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan. What is a king to a god? Broly. Broly is the perfect villain concept to counter the universe's greatest warrior race, the Saiyans. As the ultimate legendary Super Saiyan, Broly has so much power that he can't even control it himself. While he was originally created as a film-only, non-canonical character in DBZ, Broly was so beloved by fans that he was brought into the canonical storyline with Dragon Ball Super, Super Broly, with Broly now joining the main cast of heroes. The next villain that the Z Warriors face will have to be one of utterly unprecedented power in order to give Broly a challenge. Androids 17 and 18 are so popular for a reason. First introduced in Dragon Ball Z manga chapter 155, the androids awake. Androids 17 and 18 were born as human twins whose real names were Lapis and Lazuli. Androids 17 and 18 are fan-favorite characters in the Dragon Ball universe, even more than their great villains. Their character designs and personalities are among some of Akira Toriyama's best humanoid characters, which says a lot, considering they're both artificially created beings. What makes androids 17 and 18 interesting as villains is their take on artificial intelligence and the subsequent use of time travel in the narrative of their arc. Fans often give Toriyama flack for his writing, but he had a stroke of genius in his treatment of time travel, a concept that is notoriously difficult to tackle in science fiction media. Omega Shenron helped make GT redeemable, first introduced in Dragon Ball GT Episode 58, Shadow Dragons Unite. Dragon Ball GT is a polarizing sequel series that currently exists out of canon, but the anime still introduces some strong and satisfying characters. Dragon Ball GT is a polarizing sequel series that currently exists out of canon, but the anime still introduces some strong and satisfying characters. Dragon Ball GT gets a lot of criticism from the Omega Shenron was truly a callback to the kind of classic villain that fans came to love in Dragon Ball and DBZ. He was not only the most powerful villain imaginable at the time, but he also truly tied perfectly into the wish-granting concept of the Dragon Balls that is central to the entire series. Many fans have expressed concern about Daimari using the idea of turning Goku into a kid again, which made GT so infamous. Majin Buu was the ultimate final boss monster for DBZ. First introduced in Dragon Ball Z manga chapter 266, the Jin Awakens. As the final boss of DBZ, Akira Toriyama was bound to go out with a bang, and that's certainly what happened with Majin Buu, while he lacks a lot of the narrative significance that villains like Cell and Frieza carry. Majin Buu makes up for it with his design and powers, which are truly befitting of his status as the world's most purely evil entity. Buu can do pretty much everything his predecessors could do and then some. He can absorb his enemies to gain their power like Cell. He can use magical abilities like King Piccolo, and he is born with unparalleled raw strength like Frieza. King Piccolo made Dragon Ball Z possible. First introduced in Dragon Ball manga chapter 135, the death of Kuririn. After being killed by Goku, King Piccolo used his dying breath to spit out an egg that contained the incarnation of Piccolo, who fights alongside Goku and his friends today. Piccolo is one of Dragon Ball's most beloved characters, but that's more than can be said for his original incarnation, the villainous demon King Piccolo. The tension that Piccolo's presence brought to DBZ was not missed by fans of early Dragon Ball, who had followed along as Piccolo killed all of Goku's friends. Piccolo was a truly ruthless demon and the first villain who hinted at the planetary scale of threats that would make DBZ such an exciting series. King Piccolo also had one of the most interesting backstories, as he was the evil half of Kami, the overseer of the Earth, that really brought a greater level of lore to Dragon Ball, allowing it to expand to even greater intergalactic heights long before the multiverse of Dragon Ball Super was introduced. Vegeta is much more than just a great villain. First introduced in Dragon Ball Z manga chapter 10, The Needs of the Many, Vegeta is Dragon Ball Z's most merciless warrior, and Dragon Ball Super builds on that with his ultra ego form, making for some truly epic battles. Vegeta is a far better hero than he was a villain. However, his time as the villain in DBZ was nothing short of iconic. Even after Vegeta began switching sides, it was still quite clear that he would much prefer conquering the universe over fighting alongside the heroes. Vegeta's ultimate test came during the Buu saga, when, even after starting a family with Bulma and building a life on Earth, Vegeta allowed himself to be placed under Babidi mind control to once again become a villain just to gain power. Vegeta's slow growth over time was by far the most effective villain-to-hero story Akira Toriyama ever wrote, making Vegeta not just one of the best heroes in Dragon Ball, but also one of the best villains. Cell is an influential shonen anime icon. First introduced in Dragon Ball Z manga chapter 166, Kami-sama and the Demon King become one. I don't understand why creatures so defective are ever allowed to live. Oh, well, it will soon be corrected, Cell. Cell is not only one of Dragon Ball's greatest villains, he's one of the greatest villains in shonen anime history. Between his overwhelming power, his distinctive design, and his full-circle backstory, Cell made a lasting impact on fans everywhere. The root of Cell's power was the cells of all the strongest warriors that Dragon Ball had introduced so far, giving a sense of finality to Cell as the culmination of all the fights fans had witnessed throughout the series. Not only was Cell a great villain on his own, but he also led to one of Dragon Ball's most iconic arcs that was itself full of memorable moments for fans. From Gohan's father-son Kamehameha to Goku's sacrifice, the Cell Saga is arguably the best Dragon Ball had to offer. Frieza is Dragon Ball's greatest villain, first introduced in Dragon Ball Z manga chapter 53, Planet Namek Cold and Dark. Akira Toriyama was inspired to create Frieza by his distaste for real estate speculators who took advantage of the Japanese economic bubble of the 1980s. Toriyama reportedly called them the worst sort of people. Frieza has a strong case for being shonen anime's most iconic and influential villain ever created. He's also become one of Dragon Ball's longest reoccurring villains in the series, which stands as a testament to how perfectly he fits in with the rest of the cast. He's also the only villain who has steadily grown in power by achieving his own transformations along with Goku and Vegeta, making him the science-perfect rival. Frieza was the root cause of Goku being sent to Earth to begin with and is therefore distinctly connected to the hero from the very earliest moments of his life. This makes his being the person whom Goku reached his legendary Super Saiyan form against all the more poetic. Frieza inadvertently created the conditions that would lead to his own demise, all because of his wanton destruction of countless planets in the past. A truly fitting end for the series would be to see Frieza finally have his own redemption arc, just as Piccolo, Vegeta, and Majin Buu have had, because Frieza is unquestionably Dragon Ball's greatest villain. What are your thoughts? Who is your favorite villain? Let us know in the comments.